Let's talk some more about the political manoeuvring which is likely to be a feature of the EU in-out debate. We'll do that with Douglas Murray, Associate Editor of The Spectator, regular contributor here. The magazine's former editor, of course, is one Boris Johnson. Douglas, a very good day to you. How significant is the intervention in the way it's come of Boris Johnson, do you think?
Oh, I think it's very significant. It's certainly the case that Boris Johnson, from the times when he was Brussels correspondent for The Telegraph, in the 90s, has seen the EU up close, has seen its workings and lack of workings up close. He's been able to cast a sceptical eye over it for many years, but it was by no means a foregone conclusion that he was going to support the out campaign, the leave campaign. I would say that is the result, as it has been with other members of the cabinet and other politicians and many other people in the country. Simple result of seeing what the Prime Minister did manage to achieve and seeing it wasn't very much. Seeing what's more, that it may have been as much as the Prime Minister could get from Brussels, but that this tells us an enormous amount about Brussels.
Should we really believe, though, that somebody like Boris Johnson was really havering until the very final moment, that he really couldn't quite make up his mind? I mean, it's pretty preposterous, really.
I mean, you'd have to ask Boris exactly what was going through his mind for the last 48 hours, why he was a day later than the other big hitters from the Conservative Party, certainly.
It's because he's a journalist, isn't it? It's because he knows the way the news cycle works. That gives us pause to reflect upon this fact, that here's Boris Johnson, who, apparently reaches the part of the electorate that other politicians don't necessarily. There's Michael Gove with his cerebral approach. Both journalists. And in a sense, that gives them an inbuilt advantage when it comes to communicating a complicated message like the one they're trying to get across.
Well, that's possible. I mean, I think that one of the things about this entire debate is how complicated, you just saw it from the package just there, how complex the arguments are being made to seem on all sides. And it's true that there are all sorts of complex arguments about the economics, about the legal side, all sorts of things like that. But there are also underlying really quite simple things here. And for many people, these are the things that will make them come to their decision. Boris Johnson's intervention was very interesting in this regard. He said, and he says in his piece in The Telegraph this morning, that to his mind, a vote to remain in the European Union will be taken by the European Union as a green light to go ahead and do whatever it wants. It will no longer fear the threat of Britain storming out or anything like that. It will be a green light for this country to be railroaded into whatever the European Commission, the European Union decides to do. That is a very important and substantial case, as I might add, Michael Gove's case was on Saturday, because one of the central things of Michael Gove's case, which the Prime Minister and others really are going to have to answer if they're going to persuade the general public to remain in the EU, is the point that Michael Gove made about his job as a minister. He said in his statement that as a minister, every day there are things he, as an elected official, representing the will of the British people, would like to do, which he is told he cannot do because of our membership of the EU.
And this is really
laws that override that of Britain. And so one final thing on that, if I may, which is that this then comes to one of the other key underlying things, which is the issue of sovereignty. The Prime Minister said something very surprising yesterday. He said that leaving the EU will give Britain an illusion of sovereignty. But what is membership inside the EU for Britain but an illusion of sovereignty? This is what Michael Fallon and others are arguing. They're saying if we go, we won't really go. Well, what does it mean if we stay? These are very big underlying issues which the Remain camp have to answer.
You see, we're doing it now, aren't we? We're opposing the ideas of Michael Gove and the Prime Minister, and for all they maintain and contend, Michael Gove especially, that they will ration their appearances, they won't share certain platforms with certain people, they'll not indulge in an ad hominem contest. The truth is, they'll find it very difficult to resist the calls of the producers who work here and elsewhere, and newspaper editors who ask them to file columns for them. They're going to find it very hard to ration themselves. They'll be in demand.
Well, that's possible. It's very difficult because the Remain camp is straight out of the box. You know, Michael Fallon this morning, who's for Remain, saying that are making the argument that our membership of the EU is something actually that keeps us safe rather than actually posing a security liability. It's Michael Fallon this morning who ignores the fact that this country's two major defence advantages are our membership of NATO and our membership of the Five Eyes intelligence network, the Five Eyes involving nobody else from the EU. Michael Fallon arguing this morning that the EU is something we must be part of, keeps us safe because of being able to help impose sanctions on Russia over Ukraine. Now, it's impossible for anybody, a politician or otherwise, who looks at the EU and thinks that on balance it may not be such a security advantage and more of a liability, to keep quiet where Michael Fallon is straight out saying that. It's going to be very difficult for everybody involved. Obviously, we all hope that people keep it clean and everything like that. And Boris Johnson said on Sunday, obviously, there were people who he would appear with and people he wouldn't appear with, and it'll be the same for all sides. But, the key thing is that we've got to get into the detail in this debate, and that's already happening. But we've also not got to get mired in it. And as your report said, look at those much bigger questions. Do we want to be a sovereign nation, or do we want to be part of an ever closer political union? Do we believe that we are a country that has the pride and the capability to do rather well outside of the EU, or do we think that we will be terrified by the Project Fear group of people and politicians and pressure groups from all sides who will tell the British people, you'll be nothing without Europe. You were nothing until the 1970s when the EU came in and saved you. These are very big issues, and they will be irresistible for everybody with any interest in the subject. It'll be irresistible not to get involved.
Okay. Douglas Murray, good to talk to you. Thanks very much indeed.
You didn't frankly have the balls to put country before party.